Hey everybody, you're here because you are a project manager on a team that's on the leading edge of technology. And part of your role is to stay on top of issues related to technical breakthroughs, regulatory changes, competitor moves, market trends, implementation challenges, success stories, all that kind of thing. So, in this specific use case that I'm going to teach you today, you're a project manager who's assigned to a new project in an area that's new to you, building an AI platform that will help hospitals predict patient readmission risks. But you don't have the time to comb through all the research and news every morning. So let's get technology to work for us. You have to invest a little time in setting this up once, and you'll wake up each morning to a list of news articles curated just for you based on what you ask AI to do, what feeds you ask it to select, and it will be nicely summarized. The list will arrive to you as an email or whoever else that you specify. All right, so in the example, I'm going to use a scenario that I've already built. So you're going to see on screen the full version, and then we're going to walk through step by step just so I don't have to recreate it from scratch. And I'll walk you through each step of the way. We've also added the blueprint as a download, so you can either start from scratch or just upload that and get started that way. There's so many things that you can do with Make.com. We're just going to be scratching the surface here, but hopefully it ignites some passion and some inspiration in you, and you can use it for lots of things that will help streamline your processes. All right, so thanks for watching, and let's get into it. We've got Make.com, and if you've seen previous videos, you've seen this tool before. I'll give you just a quick overview so you can understand. It's kind of like the duct tape of the internet, like a Zapier. It's become increasingly more powerful now that you can plug AI modules into the workflows. But it's a really fun place to start, just on the website, that you can go here and you can look at what apps are available, and thousands of the most popular business apps, you can search for here if you use HubSpot, any of these sorts of things. For example, you could look for, okay, is Trello available? There it is, Trello, and you can click on it and you can see a little bit more about how it works. And there's all the modules that are available in Make.com, and there's going to be triggers and there's going to be actions. So say a new card is added, then an action happens. And then the cool part is you attach other modules to the series. And so here it says connect any app with Trello. So for example, if a new task gets made, then email gets sent at a very simplest level. And they will have like some examples here on the Make.com page that you can start with. They're usually pretty simple. A lot of this always starts with these automations mapping out your workflow, and so sometimes that's nice to just do with post-it notes or in a Miro board, whatever is useful for you to help you understand the steps. All right, so that said, let's jump into what it looks like that we're going to create today. It is this scenario, is what this is called in Make, this kind of canvas where your automation happens is a scenario. And just to give you the quick overview, we're going to basically provide some RSS feeds, which I'll show you how to find in a moment. It's going to scan those RSS feeds for the last 24 hours, say. It's going to then go and scrape the article's website. It's going to process that text through some AI, in this case OpenAI, could be, use Anthropic, Claude, or other LLMs if you prefer. And then it's going to add them to a list, and then it's going to create a document and then just send a quick email with the link to the document. Okay, so let's, before we get into building this, let's talk a little bit. Oh, and I can show you the result. It's not the most pretty thing, but here it is. It could also just be incorporated into the email, so we'll probably do both, a document and the email, just so you can see how they're both done. But the nice thing is RSS feeds, which stands for really simple syndication, often just give you a couple of things like the title, the link, and sometimes the summary. It doesn't always even give a summary. So what we've used AI for is to scan the article to try to find more things. Sometimes it can find more, sometimes it can find less, and if it can't find it, it will put an NA, depending on what the article what is said in the article. So that's kind of the limits of RSS, and also how we're using AI and web scraping to kind of bring it to the next level. All right, so let's talk about RSS feeds for a second. Basically what they are is anytime news articles are published or blog posts are published, This could be WordPress, as simple as a small WordPress site, or it could be a whole news outlet. And most of them offer RSS feeds. Now, important to note that not all offer RSS feeds, and some RSS feeds are password protected, or you need to have a subscription, say it's a paid news outlet. So that's just a couple of things to mention first. Now let's talk about where you would find these things. Well, first of all, you can always just Google something like, I think in this case I Googled top healthcare RSS feeds, and I found this, and then I found some RSS feeds here that we can look at. We also have this is another Google search, FeedSpot, and this is some cool RSS feeds too here. And so all of these, I believe you can pretty much just copy by, you could just like left click on it. We're going to test it, but copy the link. We want to find these RSS feeds. And then lastly is Feedly.com. And Feedly is actually a nice RSS news reader, which if you don't like your typical news reading apps, or you're like, oh, the social media is really aggravating me and I just want news, RSS feeds are great for that because they offer just news, very little sponsorship, very little ads, and really you can curate your news very well. So this is for example, my tech RSS feed with all of these RSS feeds. And this Feedly makes it pretty easy for you to search for feeds and things like that, which is pretty cool. So you can follow sources, you can look in here, like if I just put healthcare, for example, I'm gonna find some things here. And then, I could click on this and looks like there's more feeds. I could follow those feeds. But so once you've found your feeds that you follow, in Feedly, what's nice is say I go into, let's say this one here, the TechCrunch. If I click these little dots, I can actually, under more settings, find the feed. Okay, and so just something to know that some of these don't actually work in typical RSS readers. Feedly is really good at figuring things out, but sometimes they don't work. And we're going to show you how to test. So this one, so we can test these ones. And this is like how we would find those links. So anyway, you find the links, that is a little bit of how you get the RSS feeds. We're going to work with like 3 or so today, just as an example. Okay, so that gives you the overview. Now let's jump into Make.com. So if you've used it before, you're familiar with the interface to some degree. Really all you need to worry about, and when you create an account, it's going to probably look like, you're going to log in and it's going to look something like this. And maybe it won't look like this because you haven't used it yet, but this is my Make.com account, so we use it for a lot of things. But effectively, this is how many operations you're using. This is your data transfer. It's very unlikely you're going to hit the limits of either of these. You can even do a free plan and have up to 2 scenarios. I pay $10 a month, and I think I have like unlimited, and I as an AI automation agency, I very rarely, if ever, hit any limits here, which is pretty cool. They're very generous with their allotment. Okay, and then on the left-hand side, you have scenarios, which is the main thing that we're going to look at. Templates, if you've saved templates. Connections, sometimes you need to come into to reauthorize connections because basically Make.com connects to all your accounts. But what you're going to do is just go into scenarios and create a new scenario. And because I already have one, I can go just back to it. I'm going to work out of this. Okay, so let's click into it. And when you start, you're going to be able to create your first module. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is your blank canvas will look like that, is we're going to set multiple variables. And so what's happening here, I'll give you just a brief overview of the interface. You've already heard a little bit about this left-hand side. Now the bottom is ability to save. This is when we turn it on, we can schedule it. Basically, this is a time-based trigger, which is great for if you want to check something once a day or once an hour or once a week or on Monday. But if maybe you want it to happen as soon as something happens, like with Trello, if a card or a task gets made, you want that to trigger immediately. And so when you're in Trello, you can choose an instant trigger. But for us, we're not using a trigger based on something happening elsewhere. We're just doing it once a day in this case. Okay, so I'm going to say here, when I click on it, it gives me all of the different modules that are available. And I can type in, if I'm looking for Trello, I just keep using that as an example just to stay consistent. You can just type that in there. But what we're going to do is set multiple variables. And I think that I can just start typing variables like this, set multiple variables, and it's going to want me to connect automatically, but we won't worry about that. And when I click in here, what this is really just I wanted my document to look kind of nice. This is sort of optional, the HTML header and footer, but I'm going to teach it to you anyway, and we'll put that text into a doc for this workshop. So the main one here is the creation of a variable called news list. This, again, like I say, is going to put a nice little thing at the top, and it's going to make the bottom also close out this kind of, it's effectively like a little mini web page that it sends to Google Docs. But you don't have to worry about it too much because we'll get into it a little bit more later. So we've got our news list. Let's just unlink this. So if you notice, when I control click on things, I can pull up a little submenu, and that's going to come in useful in a little while. So okay, so the next thing we're going to do, and by the way, you'll see all of mine are neatly labeled. I think this is really a good best practice to label your modules. So you can right click on this and rename. I'm not going to do it for all of them because I've already done it. Create empty news list. All right, so I'll just do it for that one, and then I won't do it for the rest of these, but that is best practice. So we're going to start with what's called basically an iterator. And what that will do is it effectively, and that's the advanced piece that I'm teaching you in this course, or in this module, is that it creates a bundle of things that will happen for as many things as you put in here. And so I'm going to turn off map, and I'm just going to add the items. Okay, and actually I'm going to just go like this because I've already found these few RSS feeds. And what's neat about this is I can test these RSS feeds with the next module. So before I even put those in, I'm going to get an RSS right here, retrieve RSS feed, and it's going to want me to put a URL in there. So I'm just going to cancel that real quick. And now what I can do is actually, this is really neat. I can run the URL. So the URL is actually going to be the value. I'm going to click in there. So whenever you click in these fields, any previous fields will pop up in the options. So why don't I just take one of these RSS feeds that I found. I think I found that through the Google search. And I'm just going to put one in here so we have one to use. Eventually I'm going to put 3. And what that means is it's going to run through 3 different news outlets RSS feeds. That's what the iterator is going to do. But don't worry about that too much just yet. But what I did want to do is put this in here and put that as the value. And what's good, okay, a couple of other things that we need to do. Maximum number of returned items. So I'm going to put, for just the test, I'll put 1. And don't worry about this little error. It's going to sometimes say that. To test RSS feeds, I can right click on the module and run this module only, and that's where I put my blog XML. So let's take a look. And here it is. This is the input that we gave it this the RSS feed, and we want it to return 1 item. And here's the item that it returned. Here's the link, the title, summary. You know, this kind of stuff is not every RSS feed has the same info. Okay, so that's great. That RSS feed works. So we can also, and why this is important, I'll show you an example. This RSS feed might work, but it looks a little different than the typical RSS feeds that work. So why don't we take that one and come over here and try to test it again. And I think this might give us an error. Oh, no, it worked. Okay, great. Sometimes it looks like it needs to end with an RSS, like a XML, because that's what RSS is sent in. But sometimes it works just fine like that. Other times you need to kind of like sleuth it a little bit. But that'll work. And then I'm just going to take the third one that I already, I think this one, healthcare IT news. And I'm going to put that in here. Oh, and actually, you know what? I should test it first just to make sure that we're working with the right things. And it's looking like, okay, it's great. So all 3 of those RSS feeds are working. We're just going to play with returning 1 for now. although I'm going to make sure to add the third one in here. And what's nice about the way that we're building this is if you want to add another RSS feed, you just add it to that iterator right there, which is really cool. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is get the list that we've already started with. So here you can see the news list is what we've created. We created an empty news list in the beginning. Oh, and the reason why that's saying that is you won't have to do this, but I just need to move my timer to that. That one's now my starting module. Okay, so this news list is, I actually want to create a news list called, and we're going to do it with no HTML header for now, just so news list. And that's all we need to do. I'm going to copy that, and it can be empty. That's going to basically create an empty container for these RSS news articles. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to get a variable, and the variable is going to be the news. So all we need to do is copy and paste that name of the variable. Okay, that was the one we set at the beginning, and now we're doing it here. Okay, so what it's going to do now is go and find the URL with this one, and it's going to pull out the text from the page. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, and we don't have to worry about that. We're just getting the latest, and then we're going to add to the latest the newest one. We're going to add to what was previous. We'll add the latest one to what was already previously there. In this first case, it'll be empty, but the next time this goes around, it will have a news item and so on and so forth. All right, so we're going to do, it's called an HTTP request, make a request, and this is going to, we're going to now find the URL, which, remember, this will find any data that was in these previous modules. And so when I click on that, I can find that URL, and there it is. And we're going to get it. And then I think that's all we need. Let me double check if I had anything else. Yeah, that's all it is. It's very simple. Great. Now, when this processes the URL, it's going to have a crazy amount of code in it. All the code that's really messy. And we don't need that to process it through AI. Not only do we not need it, it's going to make it slower and more expensive to process that data. So you want to strip out all that stuff. So it's actually a nice little module called HTML to text. And so I can just type that in, HTML to, and it's under the text parser module. So I click on that and then HTML to text, and then it's going to actually be the data that comes from this last one. And so you'll see that work as, as that goes, you'll see it. Like, for example, if I go to this URL, let's see, here's this URL, okay? It looks like this. This was our test RSS feed. So this is the article. Okay, so check this out. Now I'll show you how to test this. If I want to show you what it looks like when it makes this request, I can right-click on it, run this module only, and just paste in the URL manually right there. Okay, and here's the output. Now get ready for some craziness. Here it is. It's this giant string of text. And here we are, and the article hasn't even started yet. So it's this giant thing, and that's why I want to strip it out, because what we can do here, and I can show you actually how this works in a pretty cool way. I can literally just copy, see how long this is? It's crazy. Let me just go all the way to the bottom and try to do this. I'm going to just take this whole thing, and I'm going to show you, oops, a little bit less. There we go. I'm going to copy that giant thing. I'm going to do the same thing here, run this module only, paste it all in, and it's going to be still quite a lot of stuff, but it's already a lot less. You see all the code's gone. And the AI is going to be able to read in between the lines. So it's, probably cut it down by a quarter or even a sixth. Okay, great. So what we're actually going to be using is the data you see there. Now it's complete, you can see, because we ran the test. What's nice about running the test is that you then, when you go to input these little tokens, these are called, you can see that you're doing the right one. And so we're going to want to put data there. Okay. All right. So we're moving along nicely. Now what we want to do is the fun part with the AI. Okay, we're halfway through here. And so what we do is we do a plus, and this is going to be where you'll need to have an account. And so I'll show you that in a second. But you go to OpenAI, in this case is what we're going to use, and to create a completion. You think it's Message Assistant, but that's not it. You want to create a completion, and you need this is different than a subscription to ChatGPT. This is an OpenAI developer account with $5 in it, and that $5 will last you a very long time. For example, we run hundreds of AI automations every month, and my last bill was, not very much compared to, what you would imagine. So anyway, so when you add an account, you'll need these two things, your API key and organization ID. And where do you find that? Well, you go to OpenAI, and then you come into the products, and then the API login, and then you'll need to log in. I think I'm already logged in here. Yeah, I'm already logged in here, so that's fine. But you go into the settings, and the first thing that you're going to need is to create an API key. And so when you create one, you give it a name, and it will give you a number. And copy that number, and because you never see the number again once you've copied it. You won't really need to use it again because you just create a new one for this project. So that's the first thing. Create the API key and paste it into right here. And then you go back to here, and you can take this organization ID and paste that into here. Okay, so then you'll have your, and then you'll say add and connect, and it will connect and do its thing. Great. So this is where I'm going to copy what we've actually written here because I put a little time into it. And then I can show you. So this is the long one. So let me just show you how this works. Okay, so we've got our connection. We're going to create the completion. Model is, I typically think that for now, GPT-4o is great. O1 is a little bit more expensive, but I think for our purposes, 4o is not as basic as some of these older ones, but not as pricey. It's just a pretty good, well-rounded one. So we're going to use that one. Why not? And it will also give us the amount of token completions. That's fine. You could put 0 if you want your maximum, ever that you can use. It just basically limits how much you'll spend on this stuff. But again, we're not doing the craziest amount here. Anyway, add message. And then the first one generally is your system message. And this could be like an instruction to the system, such as you're a marketing copywriting expert, that, I don't know, writes in the tone of a pirate, whatever you want. But in this case, it's going to be a little simpler. All we're going to say is analyze this content and colon, and I'm going to literally just I'll put quotation marks because it's good best practices, I think. And then that goes right in between the best practice, or right in between the quotation marks, okay? So it's going to analyze that text first, and now we're going to add another message. So it's going to do the system first, and then the second one is we want to use user. Okay, and so user, I'm going to paste this in, and then we're going to go through it. So this is what I wrote. Based on that article, this one up here, okay, well, I can actually just make this so it doesn't confuse it. I'll say analyze this article. Based on that article, provide the following information as a bulleted HTML list, including the bullet title. If there's no data for a specific bullet item, then just add NA, not applicable or not available. And then I just have these bullet points: date, the date of the post, source, the article's source, author, the article's author, overview, the summary of the article, technical breakthroughs, any technical breakthroughs mentioned, regulatory changes, any regulatory changes mentioned, any competitor moves mentioned, possible market trends, possible implementation challenges, any success stories mentioned. Totally customizable. It's going to be pulling that entire article, so you can absolutely customize this to whatever you want, which is really neat. We don't have to worry about anything else, so that's that. Okay? Great. So now what we're going to do is this is going to output. In fact, what we can do is go like this. I could even take this if I wanted to test it, remember. Just take this entire thing, and we can now run a little test, run this module only, and it's going to make me put in that article. So boom, there it's going. And so the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to actually, because that's going to give us today, or this one article, we're going to add that to basically the bottom of the list. And so look at this, here we go. And AI always sort of, OpenAI kind of hides it in this place, but here's the output. And under here, there's this message, and then the content, they hide it down there. And so here's like the HTML list. So then you see a little bit of HTML code, but it's quite nice, and all the things are in there. All right, so in here, what have I done? Well, I'm going to also copy and paste this. But this is effectively getting, it's basically going to be setting the variable to the latest variable. All right, so we're adding the item to the news list. So I'm going to set the variable. And remember, the item was called news list. So we're going to add to that variable. And so what are we doing here? Well, we're going to actually, and the reason these are now outlined is because they're no longer connected to the right flow. So I get to do this again for you. So in this case, I'm being a little fancy. I'm using a small amount of HTML, some very basic HTML to format this. This isn't necessary. You could just make it only text. But what this is going to do is make it kind of nice to be able to click these things and a little bit more bold stuff here. So let me just go with me, and if you want to just do text only, that's fine too. So this is the way a link looks with HTML. And so what we're going to do, go down here, is get the URL. Boom, there it is. We're going to get the title. Similarly, I'm going to delete the one that's disconnected and get the title. And then the summary, and this summary, and why we've actually asked the AI to do a summary, is because it's not always reliable. Some RSS feeds are really, they don't provide good summaries. All right, and so I should probably also mention a couple of other things that I did. Just to make it a little bit nicer, I made a heading that's going to make the text a little bit bigger. Again, optional. I just got a bit fancy. And then these are line breaks. So it's like a break, and that'll break it onto the new line. Otherwise, it could get it all smushed together. So it's like gives it a nice little bit of breathing room. And then I have another summary, and then the summary, another line break. This is just a little HTML that makes things bold, and you'll see on the other side of the thing that I want bold, I have a slash and then a B that closes the bold. And this is where I want to actually come in here and put in the choices, message, and content, okay? And you'll see here, there's a little bit of some funny text there, which I'll show you how to fix in a second. It should not, I don't know why OpenAI is always adding these little, I don't know, HTML with a little bit of punctuation. It doesn't really make sense, but that's what they do. So we're gonna clean it up. And then I just do another line break and a couple of other line breaks, and then the news list. So what's this doing? Let's just cover it. This is basically putting the latest article at the top of the previous news list, and then it's going to save it as the latest news list variable. So it's always going to be the latest, and the next time it runs, it will have this article in that list, and then the new article will be added to the top. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. That's how that works. And finally, what we need to do here is close this iteration, and all we need to do is go create this. Basically, you see how this gray thing is here, this kind of background, that's the closing of the iterator. And what that means is basically every feed that we provide, it will loop through as many of the amount of items that we've asked for it to get for us. So maybe what we'll do is when we test this, we'll do it with 2, just so you can see. Don't worry about this warning. It's just because this is, I think, it doesn't usually start, like this. It's just not used to seeing. It's kind of an innovative approach to make.com. But it'll all make sense in a second. So this needs to be closed, because after this, we need to get the final list and then clean a couple of things up and then do the last couple of steps. So this is called a aggregator, I believe. So it's this right here, an array aggregator. So it's going to say, where do you want to start this iteration, and we want to start it here at the iterator. Makes sense, right? So we're going to go like that. And then what we want to do, it's always asking, what do you want to carry over to this last step? It offers like everything inside here. All we really need is what was at the beginning here, which is this stuff. Okay? And that's fine. Let's just make sure it's all looking good. Yeah. And source module, I don't know why it's got that little yellow thing there. Transform, oh, it should not be the last thing, and it's not going to be because we're going to add these. All right, so look, what do we got? We got to get the variable, and so this is after it's processed everything. We're going to get the latest variable, news list. You don't click on this because that will just pull up that one that was empty. We need to get the latest one, so we need to type it in. All right. And then what are we going to do? We're going to clean up the HTML because as I showed you, sometimes it gives you these weird little things. So I'm just going to show you. This is optional again. You know, this is just to make it prettier. But this is another text function called replace. And so let's take a look at what it looks like here. You scroll down, you can see replace. And what we want to do is, oops, I'm going to just copy it from this one so I get it exactly right. But basically, if you find things in the output you don't like, you can put it here. And what we've got is this vertical line in between. This is effectively means an or. So it's, you know, these apostrophes, then HTML, or just the 3 apostrophes. Those are what I find that it always adds. Okay, and so it's going to look for those, and it's going to replace it with a new value. So what are we going to replace it with? Well, we're going to replace it with just an empty string. And the way you find that is you go over, and I haven't really gone over these things yet. This is this menu is showing everything that's popped up in previous modules. We've talked about that before, but there's a few other things that you can play around with and learn. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials on these things. Make.com has a great a bunch of examples and stuff too, but they've got all sorts of functions. They've got math functions, they've got text functions, they've got date functions, and then they get into some other things that are a little bit more complicated. But for this, all we're going to do is put in here an empty string. All right, and global match, we want it to not just do the first time it finds it, we want it to do all the times. And then that is the only thing. And then the text, this is the text that we're searching, and the text that we're searching is going to be the news list from that get variable. So once that's gotten, it will process that and remove those things. Okay. And I could do it without that even. I could show you if we could try it without that, but and then I could put it in if we wanted to, or you could just trust me. Maybe we'll just trust me. We'll keep it short because as you build it, you'll see. If you don't use it, you can see what the results are. But just to keep this on time, let's just do it properly. And so now what we're going to do is create a document, okay? So we go like this, create a document, and what I'll do is I'll show you what happens when you don't provide an HTML. We can test it a little bit. If you don't provide a header and footer, let's take a look because there is actually a way for this to have a header and insert a footer. And maybe then we won't need, because I remember that insert header text. It does want there to be header text and footer text. And I think that is what I did. Yeah, that's what I had to do. Because I think if you don't use this, it's going to look a little funny. But why don't we test it and then I can show you what I did. All right, so the name of the document, what did I name it? Let's take a look here. Okay, so what I named it was, it's a little bit complicated, but what I can show you is what I did here is name, it could just be, you know, daily report, okay? And then what you could do to differentiate it is put on something like on the schedule here. You could put now. And this is gonna be, it looks a little bit ugly, but it's totally a good way to start. What I did was a little bit more custom, but that's fine too. I can show you. The content of this is going to be let's just use the text and see what happens. I don't think it's going to make it pretty like I did with the links. I think it's just going to be a bunch of text, and that's why we need to put a header and footer. Okay, so and that basically wraps the HTML for this page with clickable links in bold. That wraps it in the header and footer, and that's what makes it work. Okay, great. So when you now to put it somewhere, we want to put it in our Google Drive. And by the way, if you haven't connected your Google, you'll need to here. And the way you do that is really pretty easy. You just do the sign in with Google, and it will connect your information and give you access. And then once it's accessible, we can choose where we want this to be saved. And we're going to choose My Drive. And then you could, if you wanted to, you could click through by going like this. It's a bit of a pain, so I don't typically do it this way. What I do is I go like this. I have my drive, and I think I have my reports. I think I already have this folder. Yeah, I've been doing all these tests, right? So I can actually just go like this and delete all these. And now here's the thing. You want to take this entire chunk of text, not the first part, just the part after the slash. That is your folder ID, and we can take that. And sometimes you see, you can't just double click on it. Sometimes there's a dash. You need to make sure you select the whole thing. Take that, and we come over here, and we can just put that right in here. Okay. So that's that, and of course you could test it if you wanted to run the module only. You could test it with test report just to make sure that the folder works. Remember, you can test these things one at a time. So let's take a look. And there it is. If I click on that, there's the test report. So I can delete that and know that that's working. And then go back here. And then the last step of this is going to be the email. So let's email it to ourselves. Okay, so again, when you click on the email, you're going to need to set up an account. Really easy if you've got Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. If you are not using one of those, you're going to need to get your SMTP login information. And so usually maybe one of these will make it easier for you. But effectively, usually what it is your email address, your server, your port, a few of these other things, which you get all of that from your website hosting provider. So that's where I've already got mine in there, so I don't need to worry about it. And then I can say something like, I'll send this to my company account. And then what did I put for the subject? Let's see. Here's your RSS. I'm just going to copy and paste this so it's easy. Subject. Here's your RSS feed news report for the day. I'm just going to take out that. So that's a little hard to say. And then here is the email, which let's go over here and read through it. Okay. Hi, we've processed the last 24 hours of news from your selected news feeds and added them here. And it's going to want us to replace that one with the actual web view link. And then it says enjoy. Okay, so let's do a test, but also let's just do a test with only one return item so we don't waste too much time. And I am going to press start, and we'll see if there's any errors. And if there is, we're going to fix them. All right, so let's see. So as you can see, it's already started here. It's running through its first iteration, and this is what's so cool about Make is visually, there you go. And so now it did its first pass, and now it's doing its second pass, and then it's going to do its third pass, and then we're going to see it go through. So now it's doing its third pass. And again, if you were doing this once a day, you might get 20 new articles, and that's why. And by the way, it might be a few cents for each of these AI usages. So it's not a lot, but just be aware that if you had hundreds, these could add up if you're doing this a lot. All right, cool. And it ran through the last things, and it looks like it was successful. Let's see how successful it was with the email, first of all. Here's your feed for the day. Okay, well, here's the email. So it sent it. Great. I click on that. And look, it actually did a great job. So it doesn't even need that header and footer. I guess what I wanted was like when I made my document, oh, it's in the trash now because I deleted it. I guess I wanted that like report up there, but I don't think we need to get too complicated. If you wanted to basically just know what I did, just as a little added thing, all I did was created a, oh my gosh, why? Oh. All right, well, luckily I had my old version because make.com just crashed, which very rarely happens. Of course, it happened while I was recording a video, but it doesn't matter because I already had this. We'd run through the whole thing, luckily, and now I can just show you a couple of little extra things that I did in my scenario to give you an idea of a few other things. So let's just talk about the header that I mentioned first. Basically, this is a standard header, okay? Now, what does the rest of it mean? So this is like the standard intro to a HTML header is what the document is, the HTML body. In my case, I have this H1, which is the heading, and it says news report for, and then this date format. If I just put now, it doesn't, like, when you go over to dates here, this is just a number. This is just number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. That's a sort of Unix timestamp. It's a standard for the internet. Now is another way to do it, but it's kind of an ugly date system. It doesn't look good. And so what I did is I formatted the date. And the way I did that is by clicking on here. I'll just show you here. Format date, like this. Format date. And then I choose now. And then it will use now to then see how I have the day, month, and then this is like the day of the week, and then this is the year or something like that. This is Thursday, November, whatever, So, and way we can find that is actually make.com date functions, and they look like this. So this is where you can decide what you want your date to look like. So that's a little bit advanced, but I thought I would just show you that. That's part of what happens. That's part of the header. And then the footer is literally just close the body, close the HTML. You see we opened it there and we're closing it here. So it's a little bit advanced, but where that then comes into play is later on when you create this, I actually have, I could have used the, I could have also used the options here, but instead what I did is I just put the header from that first setting of variables, and then the text, and that's got the little stripped out things. That's the cleaned up text, and then that's the footer. So that's how I did that. So that's the one advanced thing there. And then the other thing that's a little bit more advanced is here. And I'm going to show you this just so you get an idea of kind of some of the things that you can do. Now, this is a filter. And if you, on any of these links, if you right click, you can set up a filter. And all I say here is that this is the title of the filter. It doesn't matter, whatever you want that to be. Here, I'm going to say title exists. So I click on title, and then I choose exists. Because guess what? If you're checking this every 24 hours and a news feed doesn't have any news, you don't want it to then go process through AI like an empty thing, and then it might return something funny. So this literally will just stop it if there's no news articles in that, that feed for the last 24 hours. So that's basically the functionality of this framework. So this scenario is very extendable too. Like you could imagine, and by the way, there's things that you can do as, if you've seen any of the other videos, you can do things like you can add routers, and routers are effectively like let you start to split branches. You can actually start to do things, and it will always do this branch first, and then it will start to do that branch second. But you can make these rather complicated things. And just to show you what's possible is we've already done our nice little summary here. You could put this into a spreadsheet. It takes some more work for sure. Basically, if I was going to put this into a spreadsheet instead of a document, the way I would probably do it is ask every question separately and then put every response into a specific row. of a spreadsheet, a specific cell. I would add it to the next cell. It would take a little more work, way more than probably for this module, for this course, but I think it's good to know just what's possible. This is the foundation for a lot more that you can do. You just have to start thinking about what your needs are. So, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you need to think about the workflow as a series of linear steps. Now you see how Make works. It's in these modules, a series of linear steps. You need to think about, okay, just as if you were going to teach this to somebody, you need to put this down into a series of steps and then see if you can replicate it with the automation tool. Sometimes you don't even need any AI. But in our case, because the RSS feed wasn't sufficient, it didn't have sufficient information, we scraped the website and then used AI to answer very specific questions that we wanted to ask for the article, because that's the information that we wanted in the follow-up report. So again, this just produced a document, but with a little more work and ingenuity, you could put this into a spreadsheet. So for example, why might that be nice? It might be nice, to be honest, it's harder to read if you're actually reading the news. On the flip side, it's kind of nice because it can be maybe a log, really easy log that you can always search, but then again, you can search a document. So it really depends what you're doing. I wanted to just show you because there's so much potential here of where you can go with this, but it all starts with, again, breaking down things into a series of steps. So I hope that was fun for you. I hope it wasn't too complicated. If it was, watch the video again, just go step by step. We'll try to provide as much as you need for this course, and hope to see you back on the next one. All right, bye everybody.